Okay guys, so continuing on with the new Logic 10.4 features, let's now look at the articulations and the controllers for the studio strings. I've already done this for the studio horns. This is going to be very similar. But I will say from the get-go that the vibrato for the studio strings, as far as I'm concerned, is bugged and it's broken. I'll say that from the get-go, and I'll show you that further on. If anyone can prove me wrong on this, you're welcome to, but let's check this out. Articulations and controllers for the studio strings. Now, first of all, there's two ways to load the studio string instrument. We create an instrument track, and we can load the studio strings from the library, which will load a studio strings channel strip preset. I can choose any of the individual strings, cellos, basses, violas, or either of the violins, or I can choose a string section. I'm going to choose Studio Violins 1, and I've loaded that channel strip preset as the track. Here's its channel. The channel strip preset loads the instrument and a load of effects, and it loads up in the bottom of the track parameter box here the correct articulation set for the chosen studio strings that I've preset, that I've chosen, right? Now, once it's loaded, I can open the string instrument and I can switch to a different single instrument or a section. If I do that, I must manually then change the articulation set to match. If I choose violas, now the instrument is playing a viola single instrument, so I must go here and switch the articulations to studio strings, studio violas. I'll put this back to violins and switch this back to studio violins, right? The other way to add the string instrument is raw onto a track and its channel. Software instrument track. But this time we don't load a string preset from the library. We go down the channel here for the track, and in the instrument slot here we load the studio string instrument raw into the slot. Studio strings. Either mono, stereo or multi out. I'll go with stereo. Now that loads the instrument, but no effects or anything like that, and it does not load the articulation set. You open the instrument, you choose which single instrument or section you're going to use. If I choose violas, I then must go to the articulation set slot here and add the correct articulation set for studio violas or violins. Whatever I choose, I must input the correct articulation set here for whatever individual instrument or section I choose. Right? Okay. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so instrument. I'm going with violins 1. Open this up and we have the MIDI controller section here. Right? Now, when you're working with this instrument, you've got a choice. You can either have the velocity of the notes provide the dynamics, or you can switch this on and have a MIDI controller control the dynamics, the loudness of the notes. If you switch it to dynamics via CC, continuous controller, then you must set your dynamic controller here. The default is modulation. I always use 11, expression. And then you have a mode for the dynamics. Controller absolute, which is the one I would use, or catch or relative. Now these two, I'll talk about them in a little while. Okay, let's not get confused at the moment. So I've set this to dynamics via CC, controller absolute, meaning MIDI velocity of notes will be ignored, and the dynamics, the loudness of notes, will only be controlled by my dynamic controller MIDI CC 11. Right. Now let's pencil in the region. Make it just more than 2 bars long. And close the library. Now, this dynamics via CC, we'll come back to that, right? But I've got it set so note velocity will not control the loudness of notes. When you go to play on your master keyboard, you can choose an articulation here to play with. Now we're going to look at these in a sec, but the basic articulation is sustain, which means every note is a straightforward, simple note that plays its entire length, right? Now, you can then play a pattern in and record it. And just like the studio horns, if you go to the smart controls, there is this ability to use live key switching as you play. But this only works as you play the notes live from a master keyboard and record them into Logic. Once the notes are in the region, these don't work. Right, now you can offset these key switches to change articulations to any octave you want, so they will sit under or above wherever you're playing. Right, but to my mind these are a bit of a waste of time because, well, first of all, even an experienced keyboard player is going to be playing the melody with one hand and then switching between articulations on the fly for particular parts of their playing, and they've got to learn which of these switches to which type of articulation and then remember that and do that on the fly as they record. So to me it's a live performance thing for sure. Very hard to use, I would imagine, even if you are an experienced keyboard player. I'm not, most of us are not. So the articulations, we'll fix them after we've recorded our pattern. Now, as you're playing with the master keyboard, you can set this to sustain. You'll just get straightforward violin notes as you play, after which you can tweak them in the editor. But, you know, I'm one of those people who pencils in my stuff usually because I'm too lazy to get my master keyboard out. So, look, let's first set the loudness because we're not using velocity of notes for the loudness. I'm using the dynamic controller on CC11 set to absolute. Open up the MIDI drawer. Now, check one thing before I go any further. There's the track. Look at the track parameter box. It's set to MIDI channel all for this track. Look at the MIDI channel here. It's set to bloody 2. For some reason it's set to 2. I don't know why. Right? So, if I pencil in a note now, it's going to be on MIDI channel 1. It's put the note in at 1, even though this was clearly set to 2. So you've got to really watch this. This is odd. But now my note is in at channel on MIDI channel 1, and it's a sustain type note because sustain was the articulation set when I inputted this note. Now the velocity is going to be ignored. To set the loudness of this note, I now must choose my expression controller. That's the dynamic controller I'm using. Expression, and that needs to be on the same MIDI channel. It is channel 1. Input a node. This is now the loudness of that note. Gentle, a bit louder, a bit louder, loud, really loud. Right? So I'm going to set this at 70. So we get average loudness notes, or maybe 80. And we'll leave it and come back to it. Now let's check out these articulations. You can pencil in notes, and you can choose the articulation before you pencil in, and then the notes you're penciling in will have the articulation that you've selected. Or the other way is to just work in sustain, where every note you put in is a basic note, and then switch the articulations later. It's up to you. Let's look at these different articulations first. There is a note. It's just over 2 bars long, and our default tempo is 120. This is a note with the articulation type sustain. It has a soft bow at the start. It doesn't have a hard attack, and the note plays for its natural length at whatever the volume is, either set by the velocity of the note if you're not using the dynamics via CC, or in my case it's going to have a loudness of 80 set by the dynamic controller. Right, here we go. A straightforward note with a soft bowing attack. That's sustain. But with the note selected, I'll now switch it to accented sustain, which is the same as sustain, but it has a harder bowed attack at the beginning. after which, like sustain, it just plays through at whatever the note length is in an even manner. So that's sustain and accented sustain. Then we've got these ones here. Staccato ignores the note length. It's a little stab. And spiccato ignores note length. It's even a shorter stab. What I mean by ignores note length is if the note's longer than that stab of staccato or spiccato, it just doesn't play. Only the bit at the beginning plays for that little short stab, either staccato or spiccato. Right? Okay, then we've got fall long. And that falls at the default project tempo of 120. It takes about 2 beats rather, to completely die away. Whereas fall short takes 1 beat roughly. And if you remember, they used a lot of these fall techniques in the strings for the 90s movie Dracula with Gary Oldman. Do you remember that? They used quite a lot of this fall technique in the strings. Then we got scoop. Again, they use a lot of this in, well, let's have a listen. Scoop fast. Scoops up. Fast. It takes about 1 beat at the default tempo of 120 to scoop up. The scoop slow takes about 2 beats. And again, they use a lot of these scoops in that Dracula string score work. Okay. Again, once the scoop has happened, in fast or slow, the rest of the note, if it's longer than that, is ignored. Okay. And then accented sustain, which we've looked at. Now we've got crescendo, fast and slow. Crescendo fast lasts about 1 beat at the default tempo. Crescendo slow lasts about 2 beats at the default tempo of 120. And then we got forte piano fast and slow. Fast, and the forte piano attacks, then fades down a bit, and then swells back up, and then the note stops. Forte piano fast at the default tempo of 120 lasts for about 1 bar before the note naturally stops. Any note longer than that, the rest of it is ignored. Yeah, hard attack, it dips down in level, swells back up, and then the note cuts. Forte piano slow does the same thing but over 2 bars at the default tempo. Right. Glissando down. Oh, there go the police. Glissando down, well, it glissandos down. After which the note length, however long it is continued in like it's got a basic sustain. It just plays that note in a straightforward manner. And again, they use a lot of this glissando down and up in that Dracula strings from that film. And glissando up. Either down or up takes about 1 beat to glissando down or up at the default tempo of 120. Right. And then we've got pizzicato. Again, it's a short pluck, so any long notes are ignored. It just does the pluck. And then you've got your trills. Semitone trill. Dracula's coming. You know, it's your Dracula horror film type trill. Semitones, and then whole tone trills. That's your kind of expectant, happy, you know. Oh no, look, will the hero be winning the race when they come round the final bend? And then they come round the corner, the camera cuts. Oh, look, he's in the lead, or the dam busters come over the hill, or whatever, you know. Or are they coming back from their mission? Dum 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 dum, and they come flying in, and the camera cuts, all that business. And tremolo, and all those the trills and the tremolo. The note, however long it is how long it is, right? That's your different articulations. So the way you work is, let's switch this to sustain. This note, it has to be selected. One or more notes have to be selected to change their articulation. And we'll do, let's do the EastEnders. that is the introduction melody to the soap opera, the British soap opera EastEnders, written by Brian May from Queen. Yeah, don't even go there. This is a very British thing. It has mystified. Look, we've got certain mysteries in Britain. One of them is Stonehenge. How was it built? Things like that. And another one of the great British mysteries is, what is the attraction between Brian May, astrophysicist, and his actress wife, Anita Dobson? But anyway, she was in it. Ange, Dirty Den's missus. They were the owners of the Queen Vic when it first came out, EastEnders. I don't watch it because EastEnders, like Emmerdale now, is just people screaming and shouting at each other all the bloody time. It's negative, it's depressing, and it's awful. I'm a Coronation Street fan because it has different ups and downs, and the acting's better. But anyway, I digress. But there was one funny thing. Before the melody comes in, it starts with a drum fill, do 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 do, like that. And I don't know if they've changed it because I don't watch it anymore. But when it first came out in the 80s, it was played on some sort of an electronic drum set, do 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 do, like that, and then the music comes in. And somebody once said the drum intro sounds like somebody falling down the stairs with a set of Lindrums strapped to them, which I thought was quite funny. Yeah, so I've put my basic thing together using the articulation sustain, so I get straightforward, simple notes. And remember, the loudness is coming from this controller. The velocity of the notes is ignored. And now I can change the... let's change those to spiccato. Then that note, I could try something like crescendo slow. All three of those could be crescendo slow. Don't maybe sound that good. Let's put those back to sustain. What could we have that? Maybe is there something else that could do? Let's try a glissando forte piano fast. No, whatever, I don't know. You know what I mean? You know. Whatever you like, okay? And that's how it works. For the articulations, now let's go back to the controller for the loudness, the dynamics. I've got it set to controller absolute, which means velocity will be ignored of the notes. Now there are these other modes, catch and relative. You are welcome to try to get them to work. If you read the manual, the idea of these other two, if it's in absolute, it just means that velocity of notes is always ignored, and the loudness, the dynamics, only comes from this controller you've chosen. In my case, I've used controller 11, right? But catch, if I read the manual right, it says that up to a MIDI CC level set by the controller of up to something like 47, the velocity of the notes is going to define the loudness. And above, if the controller goes above 47, then it takes over and controls the loudness of notes. And relative is supposed to be that the velocity works. You know, notes will have their velocity relative to each other, but overall the dynamic loudness of all passages is then controlled by the controller, which adjusts the loudness of notes, the dynamic of notes, based on their velocity relative to each other. Well, you try it. Good luck getting it to work and do what you think it should do. I like working in absolute, where I know that this controller is just going to set the loudness of my notes, and it allows me to easily do climbs up in loudness like that. Easy. Or a climb down in loudness, you know. Yeah. So I could quickly do something like have that climb up to that level, maybe there, and then this note, we're going to have it start a little bit lower and just climb up in loudness. And then the next note will do the same. Come on, put a node for the start of that note, bring it down, and then it gets louder, and then the last note has a node at the beginning lower and then gets louder. But we'll have that one get louder over its ending, just its end section like that. Yeah, so you can do the dynamics really easily this way. Now there is something else, and that is the cutoff here is set to full bore, full treble. So the dynamics that you're doing here affect the loudness of notes, but when they're soft or loud, there's not a huge difference in treble amount. But if I roll the cutoff back, and that has the annoying effect of scrolling. Every time you touch this panel or move it, it scrolls your notes down out of the way. But I've adjusted the cutoff down a bit now. It's not as loud. It's not as trebly, not from the offset. That now means that my dynamic controller, adjusting the level of loudness, as it gets louder, it will bring on more treble. You can hear the treble loudness in this bit compared to the beginning here. Yeah, so you can tweak your cutoff amount, and then dynamics, louder dynamics will have more treble, and lower dynamics will have softer treble. Yeah, you can do that as well, right? Also, you can adjust the attack of notes. It's not related to the expression controller. This just controls dynamics, and if you use the cutoff, it will work with that. But attack is by default set fast. But if you touch the attack control, yes, it will have the effect, just touching it, of scrolling these notes out of the way. If I just tweak it, oh, there we go. Now, this isn't related to the dynamic controller, but once you've tweaked that attack control, just tweaked it, it switches this control lane area here to the parameter to put in control for that attack. So I just click and put in a node, and there's my node controlling the amount of attack. Look, see it moving? So I can have slow attack. I can have any attack I want. I can start with very fast attack for that spiccato intro, right? And then when we get to these notes, I can ram my attack up a bit. And these notes want to happen right on the start of notes, or just in front really. So now I've got slow attack for these three notes, right? That's too slow. So you can have any amount of attack you want, and you can tweak that as much as you like to your heart's desire. Okay, you can do the release as well if you want, but if release is it's set by default to 20%. If it's lower than that, notes just drop off a cliff at the end and they sound unnatural in their release. And if it's too high, they hold on too long and it starts to sound like a string synth with the release set really high. Okay, but you can work with the attack if you want to change the attack of some notes. And the cutoff, remember, does work with the dynamics if you want to tweak that, right? So that's how it all works. And that just leaves one thing. This blasted vibrato, which I'm saying is broke, right? Let's take all these out. Just leave my expression. I'll hoover all those nodes up. You just click on and select one node and hold it and drag, and you're hoovering them up. I'll set that back to 80, which is an average loudness. And now with my articulation set to sustain, I'll put in a straightforward sustain note. Now, vibrato set by default to the modulation wheel, so I will choose modulation. Right? And put in a node. There's my modulation amount. Down at nothing, no modulation. no vibrato, or at full. This is full vibrato. Now that, to my mind and to my ears, is incredibly subtle. That's really not very strong vibrato at this full-on amount. So one, it's very hard to hear. Sometimes it doesn't work at all, and it's a bit buggy. But to my mind, this really is not giving enough vibrato. If you listen to the amount of vibrato you get from the horns, and I know horns do give more vibrato than strings maybe, but I just don't think it's enough. It's too subtle at full setting, which means that the in-between settings virtually do nothing. Right? And the next thing is there is another mode that you can put in, which is the speed of the vibrato. Now on the horn instrument it's here as one of these drop-down lists. It's not there on the strings. But this control area, this MIDI draw area here, we can not only put MIDI controllers in it, but we can put automation in here as well. Right? And that automation will be only in this region. If you move the region, the automation inside the region moves with the region. If you copy the region, that automation is copied with the region, etc. And I can choose anything on my main channel to automate in this region. So I can choose the string instrument, vibrato mode, and you've got these following modes: off, normal, slow, fast, gentle, and expressive, and none of these make a difference. They don't work. This is slow vibrato at full amount. Yes, I can hear it, but it's incredibly subtle. Slow vibrato this is supposed to be, mind you. Now choose fast vibrato. There's no difference. There is no difference to any of these. Whereas when you switch between these different speeds or types of vibrato on the horn instrument, my God, you hear a massive difference. So this is broke. I'm saying it's broke. If anyone can prove me wrong, do so. Right? It does not change the speed of the vibrato. And the overall vibrato amount at full modulation is just too little. It's just too weak. Right, that's the amount of vibrato I would expect with the controller at about halfway. Okay, so that's the vibrato, right? But again, I say, if you can find a video anywhere of somebody making this work, the different vibrato modes, and getting more vibrato out of it, then by all means tell me. I'm saying this goes on the bug list, right? Okay, so there you go. Now there is one last thing. Let's take this vibrato off. Get out of it. Yeah, harmonies. Oops. Using our controller here for the dynamics is fine. We can adjust the dynamics of these just fixed at a certain amount across there, or tweak the dynamics, doing up and down bits, whatever we like. But when I start putting harmony notes in, thing is then, this dynamic control is controlling the dynamics of the notes both in each of these two note chords. There's no way to make the higher notes, for example, less loud. Now then we can try and switch to this relative thing here, and the idea of that should be that all these upper notes, I can select them, and lower, look how small this has got over here. What the hell is that about? Why are those sliders so tiny over here now? It's just crackers. They shouldn't be that small. Why is there such a gap here? But anyway, yeah, okay, so those upper notes, I lower their velocity really low, and then these ones, the louder notes, the main notes, I put their velocity up. Now, we've of course got our expression doing the loudness. Want to tell me why this last note here is blasting out a full bore? The velocity is the same for all the notes, whether it's the upper notes or the lower notes, and our controller here is just working out its... Now the idea this should happen with this is that these keep their relative velocities to each other, and they're way too low. Let's put them up a bit. They keep their relative velocities, but this controls the overall dynamics. That's what should happen, isn't it? What's going on? Because there's my last node setting the dynamics. Why are these ones quieter? Yeah, what's the rule? So you know, your guess is as good as mine. I say these are knackered. I say they're broke. You want to get them working? You show me then. Look, I know what the description says in the manual, but you show me them doing what they should do according to the manual. Go for it. You're entirely welcome to, right? So the problem happens, it's always best to work with dynamics via CC because it's so easy to do. Like if you're using note velocity, you cannot, for example, look, you can't, if I've got a note, and I use velocity, it sets the loudness of that note all the way across it. But with dynamics, with the dynamics coming from the CC, I can have a note that gets louder and then comes back down in loudness again. You can't do that with velocity coming from the note. Right? So obviously this is the best method, but these two, I can't get them to work. They just make no bloody sense at all. They're not doing what the manual says they should do. I can't make head or tail of them. You want to work it out? Fine, go for it. Show me them working. So the issue comes if we want to do a chord and we're using absolute controller. It's the best thing because it allows us to adjust our notes. You know, up and down. Different sections at different loudnesses. Individual notes can swell up and down, can start loud, come down, can start quiet and come up, whatever. But if I put a harmony note then, it's going to be the same loudness as the other note. And the only way to change that is to build harmonies, is to work the pattern out in the region. This to me is the best way. Put your harmonies in because you're working on the notes together. It's easy to build your harmony chords, whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever notes. Then when you've got the harmonies, you want them to be at a lower level. Duplicate the track, copy the region down. In the original region, take out the upper harmony note that you want to be less loud and have it just in this one, right? And then lower the level. And now you've got the higher note on this track is lower in level, and I can offset it against the root note. You know, this could have a third note in. But these upper harmony notes are lower than the core note. You can do that kind of thing. I know it's a fiddle, but you know that's the best way to do it to my mind. Unless you can get this to work, fine, go for it. Show me how it works because I can't. It is not doing what it should do according to the manual. Okay, right. There you go. That's everything pretty much you need to know. Yeah, just to show you, look, this has got 3 notes in. But let's say I wanted the very top note to be louder. Right, then I duplicate again. Copy this region down. In the original region, these are the 3 notes not as loud. Take the top note out and have it only in this one and have it louder in this one. So bring that one up. And this is a loud high note, a loud root note, and the 2 inner notes of the chord are much less loud. I'll put another one in here. And adjusting their levels is easy here, you see. Easy peasy. And then if you wanted to just make it a little bit more less messy, just select all these set parts of your violin thing, all of them, right? And select them all. Right click and create a track stack for them. A summing stack. And now they're all in a stack. The individual parts are here. You can close at any time. And this is your group bus. All your strings come through here, so you can EQ them here, like whatever you like. You can compress them as a group, EQ them as a group, whatever the hell you want, you know what I mean? And it's not so messy, right? Because it's all nice. Right? This block represents your 3 regions inside. Copy this, it will copy. So you just copy the block around and it's copying the contents inside, right? Easy peasy. So look, what we could do is select all those, double click. They're all in the editor, right? All the notes. Make them 2 bars long. Zoom in, shorten these regions, bring these back, and then, oh come on. And then these ones, they're all selected, so all the notes are here from the 3 different regions. Make those longer. So they're 2 bars long. And now we got that. And then this lot, obviously the harmonies aren't right in that. I'd have to look at it individually. There's my root. There's my root note. Mute these. Just that one, not muted. So what's my top note going to do? Unmute. No, top note, U. Come on, give me the bloody mute back. What's my top note going to do? My top 2 notes. So is it the middle note that's giving me the problem? I'm not a great music theorist. Yeah, these 2 are out, aren't they, for the harmony? Yeah, that kind of the old-fashioned movie type thing. Isn't it like that they do it? I'm not an expert in music, I'm not classically trained, but isn't it that kind of Samson and Delilah old-fashioned film, Moses, Charlton Heston, Moses comes stomping over the hill, or approaches Jesus and says, I can see your house from here. And Jesus says to him, no, it's an old British joke. Simon Peter, Simon Peter. And Simon Peter runs towards the cross. And a centurion slashes at him and cuts a great big swathe out of him. But he's not deterred. And Jesus says, Simon Peter, Simon Peter. And he runs a bit nearer towards the cross. And a centurion drives a spear into Simon Peter. But no, he's not put off. And he keeps getting attacked until he's been stabbed and lacerated. And he finally gets to Jesus on the cross and goes, yes, Lord, what is it? And he says, I can see your house from here. Yeah, that kind of thing, but they should actually sustain, shouldn't they? So the best thing is glue the buggers all together. And then, no, not like that. Glue them on the individual tracks. So we keep their individual tracks. But then we can get the notes to join up nicely. Right, so these should, let's have them overlap slightly. Because on the instrument, they're all set with this where is it? They're all set with this legato transitions. Right, this lot here, let's have those overlap. And then these. But I've got individual level, you see. My high strings here, they're nicely down, not too loud. The root is up loud and the two inner notes are further down. Let's hear that. Yeah, well, I know what's going wrong. It should last longer, shouldn't it? This should. What's the best way to do this? We are looking at all regions selected, the content of all regions. Move these across. And these should be extended. Let's hear it. Why, surely he is the Son of God. Hey, I'm not a strings guy, right? But you know the thing, Christ. So I'm just showing you how you would, if you want to build sections with, you don't want all the notes in harmony parts, in chord parts. You don't want them all playing the same loudness. It's going to be a nightmare trying to do it. The point I'm making here, it's going to be a nightmare if you try to do that. The expression works fine, right, for individual notes, but as soon as you start getting more than one note in a chord, how do you get them at different levels? And this is the best way to do it, to my mind, because I can have very subtle high-end strings. They could be right down. Actually, let's have that down like that. Oh, these no longer line up with the strings, do they? Oh, scheisse. Scheisse! So, yeah, they want to swell up in the middle of there. And this is only on one track, remember? Then come back down, and then they swell up. Come on! They swell up for this one. And then you'd, could we copy that? Come on, C, copy. Let's see if it'll work. Come on, V, paste. Hey, no, it's just pasted it on the end. No, that didn't work because the playhead, is it where the playhead is? Oh, come on. Don't do that. Come on! Get hold of that. Will it work? Come on, V. Yeah, there we go. And this one, hoover up. and play it to the beginning and paste. So we've got the same dynamic in each one at the same position. I'm not sure why this one here swells up really nicely. This second transition, they transition really nicely, but there's a glitch here. This is kind of coming in a bit like that. I don't know why. Yeah, and it's like, why is it doing that there? Is it to do with the controllers? Why would it? Doesn't seem to make any sense, that, does it? Why is it doing that? Maybe it's because this needs to come down a bit. It's not soft enough when it changes, whereas here it's softer before the change. Maybe it's something to do with that. Let's try that in each one of them. Just move that to the middle of it. Drop that down. This could be the problem. Okay, just this last one. So it's coming down to 24 before it transitions across to the next set of strings, the next notes. Let's try that. This could be the answer. Yeah, that's a little bit better, I think. Let's take that note out completely. Here we go. Yeah, that's a little bit better. It's a bit glitchy, isn't it? You know what I mean? You've got to be really careful with this stuff. But look, I've shown you some stuff that hopefully will help you to make more realistic strings, nicer strings. Because like with all these instruments, these, you know, what I would call kind of augmenting instruments, the critical thing is their feel, their dynamics, you know, the loudness of notes in a chord. You know, if this was up really loud, it's not wrong, but it's not nearly as nice as when it's very subtle. And if these are up louder, they're adding too much emphasis in the middle. Maybe a little bit too much, so I'd dip them down a bit. And then in this region, let's have a bass note. I haven't got any bass notes in there, have we? Thing is, it won't go down that low unless I tick extended key range, because these strings stop at G, so I need to bring in extended key range. Then I can put in a low like that. Yeah, like that. Or even lower. Yeah. And I suppose to finish that off, really, it doesn't have a natural ending, does it? So you would then want to bring in, just look, go to the first region here, touch the release control, that sets the release up, clicking a node. Now we don't want the release too high. It's about 20%. But at the end, we're going to increase the release. Let's hear that. Does it have to be at the beginning of the note? Yes, I think it does. So bring this back. 40% release then for that last cluster of notes in this track. A little bit too much. 35. No, not enough. 38. And then we'll do it the same on these. It's already there, envelope release, right? What are we starting off with this one? 20%. So bam, 20%, and then here we're going to go up for those last notes to 30, what was it, 30, is it 36? 38, yeah, 36 is similar. And on this one, bam, and then up we go for the last notes. Come on. And they should, the last string chord will decay much, will release much slower. Like that. So you can do all that stuff, right? And it all really makes a difference, obviously. Doesn't that, I mean, this ending, the string's not cutting at the end, but releasing much more slowly. It really makes the ending work. Okay, so I did a little bit more fiddling with it, and what I've done is I've set a release time of just over the default of 20. My release time is set to 23 across this section, and then for the last chord it goes up to 38, so the final chord ends with all the strings releasing much more slowly. So that's the same in every track. Release of 23 up to a release of 38 for the final chord across all strings on all tracks. And then the dynamics, the best way to get it not to glitch is to make where it transitions from one note to another note, you want to have a flat line between two equal nodes. So this is 20 to 20, this is 20 to 24, 24 to 24, 20 to 20. Right, and that's, you get a pretty nice smooth thing then, and then it's just a matter of balancing things, you know. And one thing I'm going to do is, this is the very top strings. Those are very quiet, these top notes, but the very high note, I'm going to, they're all selected, I'm going to switch them to tremolo. You know, I could do that. Maybe these ones as well, I don't know. Oh, that's a bit too much. Oh, that's an option. It's an option. I'll put it back to sustain. Anyway, that's the main thing. To make the transition between notes smooth as possible, where there's dynamics, you want a flat line. It wants to be level where notes transition from one part to another part. If you're doing this kind of very gentle blending between chords, I'll just show you that. There's my expression. Look, the two nodes are equal there, where it crosses from one note to the next two, from these two notes to the next two notes, right? And then here again, the line is flat there where they cross, and it's the same in all the regions now, right? Yeah. Okay, so there's some stuff about the studio strings, the controllers and the articulations, and I hope that's useful, and I'll see you for the next one.